Okay, ready? Gosh, are we just gonna do this?
Yeah.
Okay, ready? Okay.
I'm ready.
All right, here we go.
Yeah.
All right, hey, welcome everybody. It is Kevin Skeens, aka Coach Skeens, and today is the first Try-Love podcast presented by Try-Love, but it's actually the Children's Foundation podcast. And those of you that know what's going on know that I personally have done a lot of work with the Children's Home in Mexico for about the last 20 years. And my special guest that's going to help me host this podcast, today we're going to get information from Nancy Nystrom. So Nancy, tell us a little bit about who you are.
Hi, Kevin. Good morning. I am Nancy Nystrom, of course, you just heard that, and I'm the founder of Casa Hogar Los Angelitos and the Children's Foundation.
Okay, perfect. So what Try-Love is a group of individuals, and what we try to do is we try to empower people through love, which means giving people skills and tools they can use to take charge of their own lives. And my background is doing that in the volleyball world with athletes. I've done some of that with business professionals, but Nancy, you've done it for over 20 years with kids that come from backgrounds of abuse, abandonment, neglect, sexual trafficking. You know, kids come through Casa Hogar. But tell us, how did you kind of get your start? And I kind of want you to tell us the supernatural story that happened to you that kind of got you on this track of a children's home in Mexico.
Yes, because honestly, I never had any thought that I would ever do this kind of thing. However, in 1994, I lost my son. Some of you who know me know this story in detail, but through that terrible, painful situation, a series of things happened to me. Some people would say it was just grief working, but these things were very real to me. And at one point, my grief was so great that I'm ashamed to say this, but I wanted to commit suicide. I just didn't think I could handle it any longer.
And Nancy, what were you doing professionally at this time in your life when you lost your son?
I had an art gallery, and I had done many things in my life. I've sold real estate, I've had a music conservatory,
Mm-hmm.
I've done a lot of different things. And but at this time, I had an art gallery, and my husband was going back and forth. We were living in Vail, and he was had a company
Mm-hmm.
in Boulder, Denver area, and he was traveling there every Monday morning and would be there for 4 or 5 days and then come back for the weekend. And I was, it was during that time that I just became so despondent that I could hardly, so I just didn't think I was going to survive. But I guess, one thing that happened one night, I was going to just leave, and I didn't know what I was going to do. And it was 4 degrees. It was in the winter in Vail, very, very cold. And I thought, I'm just going to drive and go off a cliff or do something. It's terrible. I hate to even say this,
Mm-hmm.
because, except that I think more people think about these things than what we really even want to believe.
Yeah, and sometimes the pressure becomes so great. Out of desperation, you just want to fight or flight, so
yes,
you
right.
flee.
And
right?
I was ready there to do that, and so I started driving, and we lived on the east side of Vail, and I started driving, and I thought, oh, well, okay, I'm just going to pull into Wendy's and have one of their little ice cream things, even though it was 4 degrees. I kind of liked them, Frosties, and so I pulled in. I was the only person
It was
there.
4 degrees out?
4 degrees. I pulled in, got the Frosty, pulled over into the side, almost up into a snowbank, because it was maybe 5-6 feet of snow.
Yeah, when they're plowing snow, it gets several
really,
feet high.
It was really, and it was extremely cold. And I turned off my motor, and I was just sitting there and crying and praying. And I was there sitting there maybe 30, 45 minutes. And I looked up, and all of a sudden I saw these drops, like raindrops, falling on my windshield. And I thought, what is going on? And I
Yeah,
turned.
because it's 4 degrees out.
It's 4
There should
degrees.
not
There's
be
no,
rain.
and people might say, well, it was because the snow melt on top of your car was melting.
Right.
No, it was raining
Mm-hmm.
on my, or drops of water on my windshield.
Mm-hmm.
And I turned on my windshield wiper and for a few minutes and to see what this was. And all of a sudden, I just heard this voice in my spirit. Even the angels weep at the loss of a child.
Now, how previous to this event, when did you lose Freddie? Was it a month?
September 27, 1994, and this was in November.
Okay.
In October, I had had some other experiences. We had gone, my husband's trying to get me out of my depression, and we had gone to Colorado National Park, and there again, I was reading my Bible and I was praying and I was just trying to get some help. God, please help me to get past this. Help me. And so we went for a walk, first day. We were there for 3 days. We went for a walk and stood overlooking the canyon area there. It's not the big canyon, but it's the canyon that goes into the Grand Canyon. And it was a very beautiful sight. And I was just standing there looking. And all of a sudden, I felt or heard this, like a wind or sound or something that said, "Feed my children."
Feed my children.
Feed my children. And I looked at Dave and I said, "Dave, did you hear anything?" And he said, "No."
So you audibly heard.
I audibly heard this. Now, I don't understand those things. I can't explain things of the spirit. And people would say, well, you were hallucinating, you were doing whatever, and maybe, but I audibly heard those words. And I looked at him to see, and he said no, and he looked at me. Of course, I thought it was crazy, and I thought, okay, well, I just heard, and I shared that with him. I just heard these words, and nothing else was said. So we go back to the motorhome, and then the next day, I was taking our little dog for a walk, and I was taking pictures of some of the things along the way because I really like the pine trees, the gnarly pine trees that we have there in western slope of Colorado. And there was one in particular that was right in the middle of the path. And it looked like it was really an old one. It was gnarly, and I stopped to take a picture, and I took a picture of that pine tree, and then I stepped back, and when I stepped back again, I heard those same 3 words, "Feed my children." It was so, even today, talking about it, that was 1995.
Well, at that time, when you heard "feed my children," did you know what children needed to be fed?
Had no
Did you
idea.
have any idea?
I had no idea.
So that made it even more bizarre.
That made it more bizarre, and what is going on? And so the next day, we were going to be leaving that evening to go back, but I was laying in our bed and I was reading my Bible some, and I put my Bible down, just meditating a little bit, or thinking, clearing my brain. And the third time I heard those same 3 words. So this time I had said before that, I had said, okay, God, if this is you talking, then I need to know, and I need to hear, and I need to have clarification, because I'm one of these people. I am kind of maybe a spiritual person, but I also am very solid, and I like to do things very specifically. I like to plan. I like to know what I'm going to do. And so I once again heard the voice, "Feed my children," and I thought, okay, I'm going to look this up. And I prayed, and I said, God, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you want. And I looked up everything I could find in my Bible that talked about feeding, feed my lambs, feed my sheep, when Jesus was talking to Peter. And then I went to the Old Testament, and I was reading about Samuel, when God was calling Samuel. Samuel. And he went to the prophet Elias, and he said, did you call me? And Elijah said, no, go back to bed. And this happened the second time. After it happened the second time, he told Samuel, he said, the next time when the Lord calls you, this is how you are to answer. You are to say, I am your servant, Lord, and I will do whatever you want. And so when that happened to me on the 3rd time when God called, that's exactly what I did at that point. I said, I'm your servant.
Wow.
And I'll do whatever you want me to do. I just don't know what you want me to do, so you need to be very clear.
So from that, like that is, I get the chills hearing you tell that. So once you figured out what you were supposed to say back, fast forward to when you started getting clarity on, okay, maybe these are the children. Like, take us.
It wasn't until February, the following February, we were in Manzanillo, and I was taking a nap.
Well, had it still been haunting you? Like,
Oh,
were
yes.
you still like searching?
Yes, because there had been some things that had happened. A friend came into the gallery, and this was a gal that I'd spent quite a bit of time with, and she was one of these people that she came in and she said, and there was no one else in the gallery, and she said, Nancy, I'd like to pray for you.
Mm-hmm.
And this was, and she didn't know that I had lost a son. It was the first time she had come in since that had happened. And I said, okay. I was a little nervous, afraid somebody'd come in and see, this going on and think I was really weird. I already thought I was weird myself. And so she began praying, and she put her hand over my feet. And I said, no, not the feet. And she said, well, yes, and let me pray over your feet. So she did, and she said, your feet will take you on a work that you will be helping people and providing hope.
So she just out of the blue
Out of the
wanted to
blue,
pray
she
for
just
you
came in
and focused on your feet.
And
I know how you feel about feet.
Yeah, I've already
do.
talked about that myself.
So were you thinking she was weird, or were you at a point in your life where you were just...
Well, I was at that point where, okay, I'm looking for answers.
Yeah.
I was looking for answers, but I wasn't going to just jump on anything. So it was like I was taking it with a grain of salt. So then she puts her hand, she says, Nancy, I want to pray over your heart. And okay, all right. And I'm still looking out the window, make sure nobody's walking up the path. But at the same time, I didn't want to say no, because you never know what might happen. So she began praying over my heart, and she said, I see a key in your heart. And I said, okay, what kind of key is that?
I like that.
Yeah, and she said, well, I don't know, but it's an old key. It's kind of like an antique key, and that key will bring a message for you.
Wow.
And so that went on. There's so many things, Kevin, I can't tell you. And I think when you look for answers, that truly they may not all come at once, and you may not understand all of them, but you are going to start getting answers.
So this is the perfect segue. So let's do this for a minute. So we kind of got up to speed now to where, you're searching, you've been given some information from people on what you should do. Ultimately, you went to Mexico, you started a children's home and started feeding the children first.
Yeah, because I was taking a nap, laid down with my husband in the afternoon, which I normally don't do. And just as I started to doze off, I felt like someone was pulling me up, and I lifted up out of that experience. And it was like, you have to start an orphanage.
Wow.
Here. It's like, I was in shock. And
well, it's not like you have a background in childcare.
No, in fact, I used to take my children to the nursery. I would never, I would always offer to do something else so I didn't have to take care of the children.
Right.
I love my children. I enjoyed my children, but I was not a babysitter ever. And no, that was never the situation.
So it was pretty clear.
It was very clear. And it went, and the voice or the feeling in my spirit, I can't answer it. I have no idea. Yeah. I can't explain it. And maybe I'm crazy, maybe I was crazy, I don't know. But the voice began to say, and it needs to be like this. Yeah. And it will be my spirit, not by any one person or any one organization. So
the beautiful thing about this story is this story and all the others are in your first book.
Yes.
The name of your first book is Each Day a Portion.
Yes.
And it's a great book. I think, we really need to get that in the hands of more people. But what I'd like to do at this point, because that kind of explains a little bit about who you are and how can I say an Irish, maybe American woman owned an orphanage in Mexico. So that is a crazy story. That is supernatural. But I'd like to take the next 5 minutes or so of our first episode here, which is just kind of an introduction of you, your organization, and then how I fit into this. Yeah. So I'm going to tell a little bit of a story because there's some weird stuff that happened to me. So one of my many trips to Mexico, I was at the airport, and during that trip, I remember wanting your attention because, everybody loves your stories and you just have a charisma about you. And I was kind of quiet, and I had left my my two young daughters at home to go on this trip to this orphanage in Manzanillo, Mexico, and some different things had happened, but you came up to me at the airport and you gave me a copy of that key. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget it. You said, Kevin, I'm not sure why I'm giving this to you, but I just feel, like called, or maybe you said God told me to, whatever, to give you this key. So you gave me that key.
How long ago was that?
That was probably 18, 19 years ago.
Oh, at least. It was in 2002 or 3.
So it probably was. But so remember how you said when you first were told, feed the children, you were just searching, in books and Bibles and everything like that, looking for the answer. So what I did is I had this key, and my daughter tells a story where I was always looking for the answer. Why did this lady give me this key, right? So we had a speaker come to our church one time, and I don't even know if I've told you this.
I don't think
and
so.
I brought the key, and she was making fun of me. She's like, Dad, what do you think's going to happen? The guy's going to stand up there and say, someone in this room has a key? And, we laughed about that. So long story short is, you gave me that key, and I was always searching, and many, many years later, I decided to start bringing down volleyball players to Casa Hogar. So this is kind of where the key and the whole Trilove thing started. Is one of the things I do on those trips is I do mental toughness training, which is another way for us to, just help develop these girls who they are interpersonally. So we talk about leadership. We talk about what it means to be a good teammate. We talk about what it means to be mentally tough. So this one night, our topic was how to be a good team. And the girls were asking me, Coach, can we do mental toughness in the pool tonight? And being the sucker that I was like, all right, let's do it. So we got in the pool, and we were all in the pool, and it was really festive that week because there was a condo next to us that somebody was renting, and every night about this time, they were playing Mexican music. So we would swim and have the Mexican music, and it was really, setting the scene. Well, on this particular night, there was no music going, and we kind of started talking about what it takes to be a good team and all the attributes and the characteristic traits of a good teammate. And all of a sudden, the only song that we heard the entire week in English came on during that conversation. It was that song by the Beatles called All We Need Is Love. Mm-hmm. And I get the chills as I tell you. Yeah. And Coach Dolly was there. You remember Dolly? And Shadi, who was the TCF intern at one time, she was there. And we all were freaking out. Coach Dolly burst into tears. Like, we could not believe that we were hearing a song about love. As in the pool, we were having a conversation at that point of the ultimate team is a team that exists and treats each other in love. Mm-hmm. So we're having the love talk, and that song comes on. So for me,
is that when you came up with the idea of Try Love?
Right. And from that point on, Try Love was born in that pool.
Yes, right.
And another neat thing too. So 2 years later, we decided we were going to do the first annual Trilove volleyball tournament, if you remember that. Mm-hmm. So we were planning this Trilove tournament, and we had Trilove signs made, and Trilove was the link to Casa Hogar. And the night before the first golf tournament, I don't know if you remember this, the 23rd of June, my grandson was born. So the morning of the Trilove tournament, I lost Chris, my right-hand man, to the hospital because he had to go take care of my daughter who was having my grandson, Caden. Right. So I always thought there was pretty neat meaning too that, Caden was born on the first annual Trilove tournament.
Right.
So long story short, this whole Trilove philosophy has been something that's consumed my life for the last 10 years because I know that whether it's business, sports, life, anything, love is the answer. Love never fails. Love is the secret sauce. And that's what I want to do with this podcast is we're going to talk about how love is the way that you've kind of ordained this children's home that you do, and everything that you guys do is out of love there, and you don't run it the way a typical children's home is run. And I don't run my volleyball club and all my endeavors in a typical way. We both have a similar philosophy, and the neat thing about it, and we're going to share a lot of stories the next couple of days, how love is transforming lives. And I think we have some amazing stories.
Absolutely.
So let me ask you this then. What would you say is probably the most amazing story that's come out of the work you do at Casa Hogar Children's Home?
Oh, there are so many, Kevin. It would really be hard to just choose one. We have one child after the other. I want to give you one though, because that's maybe Andres, who he and his brother Artemio came in when they were 6 and 7, almost 7 and 8, and they were going to a local school. That also is something that changed my thinking as well, because at that time we were operating the Casa Hogar more like a typical Casa Hogar is operated. We had house parents, and we, you know, the kids were there and they were living there, and they would go to school, and we were just taking care of them. Even though better than normal, but we were just basically taking care of them. And then the kids didn't want to go to school. There was 3 or 4 days this whole week that they just didn't want to go to school. And I went and I was talking to them. I said, what's the problem? Why don't you want to go to school? And so finally they shared with me, and they said, because when we go to school, some of the teachers and all the kids say, here come the donkeys from the Casa Hogar.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. And it just broke my heart, And so I, from that moment, I decided we will never let that happen again. And that began a change for me in the way that we looked at the Casa Hogar. So it was kind of indirect.
Well, I look forward to in the next episodes here, talking about more stories. And I think in the next episode, we're going to get into the programs that are based in love that you run at Casa Hogar that are radically transforming lives.
I think that's extremely important. That is the thing that makes it.
Okay, Nancy, well, good stuff. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
All right, thanks. That was 20, I think right around 20 minutes.
Was it too?
I don't think so. You were way better than usual as far as staying on track. Like you really did, I feel like.
I tried too.
I feel like maybe, was I talking too fast about my stuff, or is it okay? I'll stop that.
You're good.